Now, the Orthodox Church in Russia has urged the government to show mercy to the 3 members of the punk band Pussy Riot who've been sentenced to 2 years in jail for hooliganism. In one of Russia's most closely watched trials, the judge said the women had committed a crime motivated by religious hatred when they performed a protest song against President Putin in the city's central cathedral.
3 members of the Russian punk band Pussy Riot have each been sentenced to 2 years in jail after being convicted of hooliganism motivated by religious hatred. The trio were put on trial after they broke into Moscow's main cathedral in February and sang an anti-Kremlin song. The lyrics of their so-called punk prayer urged the Virgin Mary to rid Russia of President Vladimir Putin.
They were found guilty of hooliganism driven by religious hatred, offending believers and disrupting the social order. The Russian Orthodox Church, which is close to Putin, had been seeking a heavy sentence. Human rights groups and supporters, including American artist Madonna, say the sentence is too heavy and politically motivated. The group's lawyers are suggesting they will appeal the ruling.
The 3 were arrested in February after singing an anti-Putin punk prayer at the altar of Moscow's main cathedral. Their lawyers believe they haven't had a fair trial. President Putin, for his part, called for a sentence that wasn't too severe. Pussy Riot have received messages of support from around the world, including from Madonna and Björk. Demonstrations calling for their release were held in more than 30 cities on Friday, among them this one in Paris. In Kiev, an activist from the feminist group Femen staged a topless protest for the band, during which she cut down an Orthodox cross in the city centre. She's now being prosecuted for a similar offence to Pussy Riot, which carries a maximum penalty of 4 years in prison.
This was the scene in New York's Times Square on Friday. Supporters of the girls denounced the sentence and called for their release. And these supporters in the UK wore balaclavas like the band members do, and they shouted anti-Putin slogans. They had gathered outside the Russian embassy in London to protest against the situation. Melissa Chan reports from Moscow.
Everyone showed up outside the courthouse, the devout praying for a tough sentence, musicians with their messages of solidarity, creative types, Pussy Riot wannabes, even a string quartet, and police everywhere. Prominent opposition leaders showed up to voice their support. Garry Kasparov, the chess master, questioned why he was being arrested as he was led away. The women's defense team called the trial a sham.
The verdict was the result of political decisions made in the Kremlin by Vladimir Putin.
In her closing statement before the sentencing earlier this month, Pussy Riot member Nadezhda Tolokonnikova showed no fear about her future.
We may physically be behind bars, but we are more free than you sitting on the side of the prosecution. The difference is that we choose to say what we wish and what we think.
Opposition leaders said this trial was appalling. The verdict, a farce.
It's total savagery, but this is what Russia is now. This is the kind of country we have to live in.
The judge ruled Pussy Riot's anti-Putin punk prayer, performed at Moscow's biggest Orthodox cathedral, was hooliganism motivated by religious hatred. As the crowd outside waited for the verdict, there were signs of how divisive this case has been in Russia. Disputes were everywhere, between those who came to support the band and Russian Orthodox believers who wanted to see Pussy Riot punished.
They fight all Russian culture. They fight with all Russian people. They fight with the God.
Today in Paris, protesters called for their release, while in Ukraine, activist group Femen did their best to match Pussy Riot's audacity. Madonna lent the band her support when she performed in Moscow.
I'm against censorship, and my whole career I've always promoted freedom of expression, freedom of speech, so obviously I think what's happening to them is unfair.
In a letter to the women he posted on his website, Paul McCartney said, "I hope you can stay strong and believe that I and many others like me who believe in free speech will do everything in our power to support you and the idea of artistic freedom."
The women's families were in court. The father of Yekaterina Samutsevich said his innocent daughter was being sent to jail. Nadezhda Tolokonikova's husband said he wasn't surprised by the outcome, despite Vladimir Putin saying he hoped they wouldn't be punished harshly.
Well, 2 years of brutal Russian prison for President Putin is, well, somewhat of a lenient sentence.
Their time served in custody, more than 5 months, will count towards their sentence. It's possible it could be reduced further on appeal. Throughout the trial, the women of Pussy Riot said they didn't regret the action for which they knew they were going to be punished. They also knew it has helped to make them a global brand for protest and dissent.